Full Melt Show is intended for a mature audience. It contains adult themes, adult content, and sometimes adult language. Listener discretion is advised.
It's the Full Melt Show.
All right, medical marijuana, clearing the Michigan House. We're going to distribute marijuana. We're going to tax it, and wow.
Yeah, well, they're going to really try to clean up this law that has been, really kind of a mess at times. And the next guest may even want to expand upon that. The 2008 law just did not contain any kind of a system for delivery and distribution of medical marijuana.
And safeguarding the product.
And making sure that it is safe and there's not certain chemicals used on it and such. And so they're trying to really kind of clean this up. Now the challenge is to get a 3/4 majority over in the Senate to pass this.
Well, they got to get through Senator Rick Jones, a former Eaton County sheriff, who put the kibosh on this in the previous term. He seems more open now. Yeah. That he's not just going to obstruct this. In fact, he seems very open to it. I think there's going to be some discussion about the taxation level. But this looks to have some legs for sure, and it does seem, at least on the surface, it's going to make the law much more functional than it is right now.
I talked to Senator Steve Bita, who's the ranking Democrat on Judiciary, where this legislation has gone. He said, you know what, I've talked to cops, and they're concerned about the transport of this stuff across. He said, this is like a Brinks truck. You got a truck full of marijuana. Are these things, it's going to be the old stagecoach days, where you're going to be robbing these things. So that's one thing to look at. But others are saying the 3% excise tax on this, if we don't tax prescription drugs at the counter, why are we putting a 3% tax on this?
Yeah, I think that kind of sweetens the pot politically for some people who say, why would we go through all the regulatory trouble to, they have this kind of seed to sale tracking now that they're trying to institute with this law. And it is going to take a little bit of oversight and a little bit of administration on the state's part. So, basically the state's getting reimbursed for that and then maybe some extra.
All right, so let's move the ball down the field. Does this legislation, assuming it passes, lay the groundwork for legalization of adult usage for recreational purposes of marijuana?
Absolutely. If you're going to go this far and create this, seed tracking system and such, you're going to eventually, you're going to have a ballot initiative or two in your lap. They could adopt one of them, and it would seem more likely that if they get that in their hands next year, if they've established a system for a medical system, a taxing vehicle for a medical system, then they can actually go and maybe have a higher tax for the recreational pot, and there has been some higher tax rates proposed initially. So,
but that is a tougher sell.
Oh yeah,
that's a tougher sell.
And there's not a lot of there's not a lot of polling on this, but it isn't starting out at 65% yes, which is, always a red flag. It is a tougher sell, especially I think if you do say we have a functioning medical marijuana system, then, is the state ready to go the next step and just say, let's just, decriminalize it and legalize it for recreational purposes? My suspicion is it would be a very close vote.
Well, the people, some in the legislature are saying, wouldn't it be better if we wrote this law rather than the people, looking back to 2008 when the people wrote the medical marijuana law?
It takes 7 years to repair it.
Precisely. Yeah, so wouldn't it be better if we just did it?
Right. And I think that this law or one like it would kind of get the infrastructure in place so that when the public is ready for, the legalization you talked about or decriminalization, then I think that, the infrastructure would be in place for that to roll out more smoothly than it did in 2008 with medical.
Are you high? What are you talking about?
This is the Full Melt.
The Full Melt Show. A marijuana discussion about news, culture, politics, and lifestyle. FullMelt.com. Toll free. 844-420-TALK. 844-420-TALK.
Yes, that's right. We're coming to you live once again from the PetPain.com studios in suburban Detroit. Welcome to Tuesday. It is election night follies on CNN. I can tell you all those Democratic candidates are lining up to talk about politics. Is cannabis going to be on the subject? We'll dive into that just a little bit. I tell you what, I've got an answer to that guy's question. By the way, the very front of the program here, laden with audio from public television, courtesy of, I actually took that from WTVS Detroit, which is a public television station. The program that provided that audio courtesy of, Off the Record with Tim Skubic, by the way. Tim has covered Michigan politics for quite some time and is known both in the commercial and non-commercial markets and news for his coverage on politics in the state capitol here in Michigan. And so, it's always it's nice to take a temperature, a consensus of that mainstream thought process about marijuana politics, especially as it comes to Michigan. And that's the best place to do it, I think. That's the best place to get the mainstream thought on what's going on. They're reflective of that point of view. And so, basically that program, Off the Record, is kind of like a This Week type of program. It's a panel program, which I much prefer this program to be. If I could get a panel of people together to talk about different issues and just cycle through a bunch of issues every show, boy, that would be my goal. Getting people to commit to that process is another ordeal entirely. If you'd like to commit to that process, you'd like to be a part of this show on a regular basis, if you're a thoughtful person in cannabis policy, if you're a gardener, if you know about growing, if you've got a garden going and you had to defend it from police and prosecutors, I think you're perfect for this kind of a program. At least if you can speak, if you can, kind of, obviously you've been successful in maneuvering around the politics of things. Perhaps you could give a point of view to this program that I'm unable to give. Now, I have much the same point of view, I think, from just this corner. I am a patient. I am a caregiver in the state of Michigan. Never ever hidden that idea. In fact, as soon as I became a patient and or caregiver, I uttered it from mountaintop high. I said high. I did it for a reason, because, if you're going to be in this place, if you're going to be in the cannabis community and you're going to do it legally and you're going to do it without cuffs on you, I think that it's important that you identify yourself. Because absent that identification, it just leans the idea that you are still believing you're in a criminal place. And I think that perception is reality. If you're perceived as being of the personal mind that you're in a criminal place, it's a lot easier from my point of view, to get other people the impression that you're also in that illegal place. Even though you're not trying to be, the fact that you're not forthcoming about it, to me, if I were to discover that, if I were to put myself in the place of a law enforcement officer's shoes, and stumbled upon somebody who wasn't forthcoming or was hiding the fact that they were a patient or a caregiver, it might make me naturally tend more to believe that they're hiding something for a reason and that the reason isn't legitimate, when it clearly is. I mean, the thing that they would be hiding from is the idea that traditionally this has been illegal. It still is illegal in Michigan. It's just that there's a protection, a limited immunity from arrest and prosecution, given your occupation of this space inside of certain barriers. You've got to act within the rules if you expect the protections of the act with regards to, the police's inability to arrest or prosecute you for your marijuana use and or gardening. In the case that they find you outside of those protections, there's still an additional defense in court in Michigan law. Mr. or Mrs. Jury, or Mr. Judge, Mr. or Mrs. Judge, Mr. or Ms. Judge, perhaps, I'm guilty of the charge that's been levied against me, but I have a reason. I have a medical need, and it is a legitimate defense in the state. And so it's not to say that you're not guilty. You are guilty, but there's no penalty attached because you're acting within some provision inside of state law. I know that's a lot to think about. But that's the way it is here in Michigan. And what I started to say is I've got an answer for that guy on Off the Record that posed the question, is Michigan ready for this? Is the legislature ready to go along with retail cannabis or even medical marijuana when you're talking about dispensing it at the store level? And the answer to that question clearly is no. The legislature has two things going for it that are negative in this category. The first and biggest negative thing in this category that would prevent that tells me the answer is clearly no. They're not ready for this. It's that they've not provided police with a reasonable substitute for the money that they get for themselves, their own departments, their own working environment, their own spending budget. If you take marijuana off the plate for them, their money goes down drastically. And I mean drastically. That's how much they target cannabis. If you took any of the other drugs off the table, if it was meth, if it was heroin, if it was cocaine, if you took any of those off the plate, none of this would matter as much. Because those all mean smaller revenue amounts to them at the end of the day. They profit from it less. That's what it comes down to, when you blow away all the dust and smoke and mirrors and, mired language, couched terms. It all comes down to they're making less money on those busts. They do them less often for that reason. Look, if you're a waiter and you got a regular group of customers that comes in and you know that those 3 tables over there don't tip you and this table over here always tips you really well, and that you'll make out better at the end of the night if you work this table for those tips and you leave the other ones alone, you just, let them go. They're not going to tip you anyways. You could give them the best service that they've ever had, and they're not going to tip you because that's just how those customers are. You know what you're going to do? You're going to do exactly as I said. You're going to pay attention to the table that's tipping you. That's what the police are doing. They're leaving those other tables alone because cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, all these other drugs don't mean a hill of beans to them when it comes to monetary motivation. What means a lot to them is that cannabis issue. And so if you take it off the plate for them, and this is not their fault, by the way. This is not the fault of the law enforcement community other than their willingness to go along with this prescribe that's been handed to them not only by the federal government but by the legislature in way of incentive. Look, we're not going to give you any more money for your departments, but we expect that you're going to put more people on the streets. We're going to expect that you're going to lower crime rates. You're going to have a better record than the last administration. And that you're going to upgrade your equipment so that you can maintain all this stuff. Tell me where those police are getting the money if it's not coming from the federal government or from the state government, usually levying some grant money from the federal government, leveraging that. When they don't have an answer to that question, the police are going to put a big fight up against this because how are we supposed to run our departments when you take this money away from us? What is in its place? And the answer thus until now has been none. You get nothing. That's not a good answer for them. And so you're going to get this fight. No, we're going to fight to keep the marijuana money. We're going to actively lobby legislators to keep this in an illegal space under any terms that we put it in. So that's the answer to that question. No, off the record, the Michigan legislature is not ready for legal cannabis or even medical marijuana distributed through distribution points because they've demonstrated it by action. That's the truth of the matter. More on the politics of cannabis coming up next. You're listening to The Full Melt Show. Happy Tuesday, everybody. The Democrats are on CNN.
You're getting the full melt.
Hello, boys and ghouls. Your old friend the Crypt Keeper here with a Pottober News Bulletin. Ghoulies and creepies gather thee round for a map to patience partying down. As the days grow shorter to the end of month 10, it's time to gather, friend among friend. Michigan card holders, admission is free to the X on the map dubbed Hall Deboween. This lure of free fun is perfectly true, and this is the invite. Yes, that means you. The vendors and speakers this day are just ghosts, exchanged for free entry, free food, and a toast. Asunder our differences this Hallows Eve, so we may bring fire to glorious weed. You may light up and your neighbor may match it. The smoke in the air is to bury the hatchet. The contests you enter are all also free. Considerable prizes for the winners there'll be. Can of meds are welcome. It's alcohol free. The Jam Shack, Mount Morris, from 7 till 3.
Deboween sponsors include Depot Town of Ypsilanti, Sweetly, Flint, Harborside, Ann Arbor, Third Coast, Ypsilanti, Dank Team, Flint, Two Guys in a Grow Shop, Burton, Florida Bob's Place, Puff and Stuff of Lansing, Happy Buddha, Lansing, The Spot, Kalamazoo, Compassion Club US of Grand Rapids, Iron Labs, Walled Lake, Herbal Solutions, Ypsilanti, Bio Cultivation, The Herbal Center of Mount Morris, IDK Farms, Kurtz Leach and Associates of Birmingham, Act Labs, Lansing, Bill Clark Fashion Investments, Burton, Hybrid Life Magazine, Once Bitten, Twice Paid, Plush Lighting in Niles, Cannabis Council, Detroit, Nichols Law Firm, East Lansing, The Green Rock Cafe, Flint, Urban Garden Supply, Flint, also the Marijuana Ranch, Happy Harvesters, The Full Melt Show, Lindy's Bed, Matty Eddie, Flex Cocaine, Jaxica Farm, and BDT Hazel Park.
Got something to hide? Canalock offers discreet and effective storage solutions that destroy odor, so nobody knows. Canalock is a patented charcoal-activated bag that discreetly stores your marijuana. Canalock is made from the same material as military chemical warfare suits. Get yours at Canalock.com. Visit Canalock.com to learn more about no-smell technology.
Hey, it's Steve Green for the Sweet Leaf in Flint, because now getting safe access to medical cannabis patients in Flint, Michigan is never more welcoming. Presenting the Sweet Leaf, a brand new patient experience bringing 12 carefully selected caregivers housed in 9 separate offices to distinctly assist you with their knowledge and reputation for excellent patient care. Classes and training coming soon in the large community room. Check it out in person, 400 South Door Highway, or call 810-259-2571. The Sweet Leaf Center in Flint, 810-259-2571. Introducing Sacred Elements, a place for natural and alternative healing for the mind, body, and soul. Sacred Elements. It's one place, all solutions.
Registered, licensed, certified, ordained.
Sacred Elements.
Massage, hypnosis, Reiki.
Sacred Elements.
Raindrop, aroma and color therapy, body detox, ministry, life coaching, weight and nutrition counseling.
Sacred Elements. Next to the Sweet Leaf, 400 South Door Highway, Flint.
11 to 7 daily, closed Sunday.
Call 810-259-2570.
Don't miss the first ever cannabis competition this year as the prize contest moved from Amsterdam to Jamaica. That's right, it's all Jamaican fun now with the Big Cup competition in Negril this November. Get your best travel accommodations now at JamaicaPot.com. Pack your beach bong and swimsuit and party down at the warm sandy beaches of Negril, Jamaica for the first ever big cannabis event this year. Do it in style or come have fun on a budget. Best travel prices now at JamaicaPot.com. That's JamaicaPot.com.
What's up with these things, Victor?
We decided to give ourselves stickers for each feature we release. We read about 10,000 suggestions a week to create features that as traders we'd want to use.
10,000 suggestions? Who reads all of those?
He does.
For all the confidence you need, TD Ameritrade, you got this.
It's the Full Melt Radio Show.
Radio Show.
Hey, our phone lines are sponsored by Canalock. Canalock.com, the no-smell bag line.
I'm not a fan of winter rain.
In fact, we're going to give away a Canalock bag right now. It's a 1-ounce Canalock bag. I will take... Which call am I going to do? Okay, I'll just do the first call. Just do the first call. Why play with all the other calls? I mean, somebody's going to hit call number 1. 844-420-TALK. 844-420-TALK. You might have to hang on the line for a minute so I can get your information offline because I don't have the call screener here tonight. For a Canalock bag, a 1-ounce Canalock bag, 1-844-420-TALK. Lines are open now. So as always, I'll just go on here with, I got to tell you that, in about, I don't know, as the program is being recorded, it's 7:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right now, where I'm at, in the suburbs of Detroit. But in about 40 minutes from now, the CNN Democratic presidential debate will be getting underway. Absent the much languished over question about whether or not Joe Biden will be on that panel, I can tell you that his podium is still wrapped up in Visqueen downstairs on a dolly. It is not on the stage. Not that that was any kind of big news. However, that being said, will the question of marijuana touch the lips of these candidates tonight? And I venture to say that question would be yes. Because it's too big of a... And this is something that I predicted long ago, that these candidates who, I think if you think back just 4 years ago, you could hardly get any of these candidates off stage to respond to a question about cannabis. None of them would talk about it. None. The only ones who are willing to provide some inside view as to their point of view on cannabis, and it was very, small, very slight, very not very introspective. You'd have to catch them going in or out of some place, and when they finally decided that they had to answer this question, Barack Obama was one of them. You know, he talked about this a little bit briefly. He alluded to the fact that marijuana policy should be reformed. He outright told everybody that he had used cannabis and other drugs before, including cocaine. But he never talked about what his current belief about current policy was. And then when he did become president, he kind of followed through with that policy in the following way. He talked. He let the Department of Justice know that the edict, the presidential order was, the executive order was, to change cannabis policy. And not in an outright way, but an enforcing way. That we were going to not go after these medical marijuana people so much. We were going to lay off of those guys. And especially if they were, acting within the bounds of their state laws, assuming that they had this kind of law going on. And then, in addition to that, I think the Cole memo, which is what the document we're talking about is, that was issued by the Justice Department, also went on to give some boundaries and guidelines about what they will do, and also reserved the underlying principle that this is all still illegal, and at any time we could change this policy and enforce federal law regardless of what we're saying here. And they did. They've gone and done that anyways, much to the dismay of many people who took that Cole memo as a green light to go ahead and participate in their state's cannabis program. The federal government's just given us the okay in the Cole memo. That's not what it was. It was a general guideline to federal prosecutors about what to do and what not to do when it talks about taking up these kinds of cases. And aside from that edict, you have to understand that law exists currently today that says that those federal prosecutors are pretty much autonomous. That, yes, they have a boss to answer to, and he's going to outline policy, but it doesn't preclude these individual prosecutors from taking up these cases and prosecuting them anyways, because it is still one of their underpinning laws, one of their underpinning principles, which is to enforce federal law. And that's what they're going to say. There's a lot of federal law that they go run around sticking their nose up people's butts with a microscope over. But none of those things produce them money. Cannabis does. So the question again, circle back around to, is will these guys on the thing today, on the presidential debate, the Democratic presidential debate, because we got it out of them. My promise rang true. Jake Tapper clearly asked about the cannabis question. And we got Carly Fiorina on this, talking all kinds of stuff because she's had a child that died from drug abuse. I don't think that cannabis use in any form is drug abuse. I just don't. No more than I think that alcohol use is drug abuse or alcohol abuse. Alcohol use is not abuse. Cannabis use is not abuse. When you know what the definition of abuse is? If you talk to a counselor or somebody about, substance abuse, if you start talking to these people from an official capacity about what defines substance abuse, it's when your activity, your engagement, your consumption of said substance starts having negative consequences for you and you persist in its consumption despite that. That's probably the number one indicator that you have a substance abuse problem, when you've got negative consequences. And usually it's not just law trouble. It's not just trouble with the law. It's in addition to trouble with the law. You're not doing your regular, you've altered from your regular life pattern. You're no longer maintaining the life that you've always had absent the drug use or absent the drugs abuse. The drugs becoming abused when you've altered your life pattern and you've got negative consequences. So you're changing up the way that your daily life goes. Your routine is different now because it's injected this drug question. And then also, when the drug question is interjected and into this changed daily life plan, or your daily routine, when it is present in that routine, there's negative consequence attached to it. In other words, now I didn't go to work, or now I'm late for work, or now I'm hungover from work, or maybe it doesn't involve work at all. Maybe it's I was supposed to do this one thing, this one detail that I didn't do because I was busy with abusing drugs, And I didn't do this really important detail. And absent the drug use, I would have done the detail and I wouldn't be suffering these negative consequences. This is the defining principle about drug abuse. This is the indicator that you're no longer using the drug, that the drug is now using you. And I'm not a drug abuse counselor. I'm not trained in these places. I'm just giving you my common sense reflection about what this is and how it relates to this topic, which is these presidential candidates discussing their platform about drug policy reform, specifically with regards to cannabis. And like I said, we got it out of Carly Fiorina. We got it out of, we got some more information. I think the guy that's friendliest to this ideal in the Republican platform is clearly Rand Paul. There are a lot of people who are marijuana friends of mine who would love to just elect Rand Paul and have this issue be done with. I would say that I am not aligned with you on that point of view because I think, number one, Rand Paul, in my opinion, would present a much bigger negative consequence to his overall presidency should he ever become elected. And I just don't think he's electable, really, honestly. But assuming that I was wrong and assuming that he was elected and we were all rejoicing for his cannabis point of view, I think even given the positive point of view that he would bring to the cannabis reform issue, perhaps even rescheduling or descheduling marijuana from the Controlled Substance Act, that the other things that he would bring to the presidential capacity would outweigh that tremendous benefit. So I would say be careful what you wish for. That's a great little dangly carrot to get you to vote for Rand Paul, but I just be very cautious about the rest of his policies. I think the rest of his policies are a mixed bag of trouble. Again, opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one. This is my opinion. This is what I have to say about it. Do you have something different to say about this? Call in and chime in. You'll win a Cannalock bag. We've had no caller on the Cannalock bag. Get on the phone and win the 1-ounce Cannalock bag. It's a no-smell bag. It keeps your cannabis locked away safely so nobody knows. It's normally like a $40 or $50 value, this size bag. It's made with a patented smell-proof barrier that is carbon impregnated, so it not only absorbs smells from the inside, but it doesn't let them out. It's the same material they use in chemical warfare suits, and it's an awesome addition to anybody's cannabis repertoire. And I can tell you just from knowing people that have used this bag that it works well inside the luggage. That's all I'm going to say about that. Outside of that, so win yourself a free bag. And tell me how you feel about the presidential candidates and cannabis. I can tell you that the news today says that there is heavy pressure on one Hillary Clinton about this subject. I mean, just what is her position about it? I can tell you up until now, she's been very candid. I said candidate. She's been very candid about this. She hasn't been said really anything about this other than which is the typical politician's answer, which is not to answer, by saying, I think we should wait and see how these experiments in places like Colorado play out. Well, wait a minute. When is it to be said that the experiment, quote unquote, and I don't think that that's what it is at all. I think this is just a change in policy. If you want to call it an experiment, label it as such, but I disagree with your terminology in its depiction. This isn't an experiment. This is an exercise in free will. It's a change from everybody else's point of view, and it's reaping them benefit. How? And they're not putting people in prison. They're not putting people in jail. They're not wasting precious few police resources on chasing a few people with some pot around the countryside. They're not engaging in all of the cost associated with said activities. Instead, they're reaping the benefits from employment opportunities and all the tax base that goes with that. And then, more importantly, the very apparent benefit of reaping all that cash money coming in from those taxes, now said to exceed in sales alone this year, in the year 2015. Right now, the news says, the stats say, the figures from the state of Colorado itself predict that they're likely to exceed $1 billion in combined cannabis, recreational, and retail sales, retail or recreational and medical, when you combine both of those markets, because there's both in that state, over $1 billion by the end of 2015. Who could have made that prediction that it would have been that much? Do you know how much $1 billion is? I mean, it's easy to throw the number around, but when you look at it stacked up, I mean, you got $1, and then you got $1 million, and then you've got $1 billion. You know, $1 million is 1,000 million dollars. That's what it is. You've got 1,000 stacks of $1 million to make $1 billion. That is a lot of dough. And so you figure what, there's a 10% excise tax. So there's like, what, $100 million right there just on the excise tax. Assuming it was across the board, it's going to be a little bit less because the excise tax isn't on medical. It's just on like retail. But you get my point. This is the benefit. This is the experiment, quote unquote, that Colorado's conducting. It's the freeing of all the bullshit attached with the prohibition. Because the prohibition is a cure worse than the disease. If you're trying to change the social aspects and traits surrounding something like cannabis, when it's a pervasively used substance across the nation, you're wishing up a pipe dream. Number one, the thing that you're trying to do is an impossible task. Number two, if you even try to do it, it's going to be very expensive. And the only thing you can do is keep trying and keep trying harder. And all that's going to do is create a bigger cost. So we spend billions of dollars, trillions of dollars, if you add it up over the past 70 years on cannabis, eradication, interdiction, incarceration, criminal justice. So we have as a nation have decided that this is no longer tolerable, that we have 25% of the prisoners of the world when we only represent 5% of the population of the planet. Just say that again. We represent as a nation, the whole country, all of our every citizen in the country, 5% of us. It's 5% of the whole world. But we have 25% of the whole world's prisoners in this country. So we're very litigious. We want to take people to court. We want to make them pay. We want to throw away the key but we never want to ask how much that costs. And it's gotten insurmountable. And this is why the change. I'm going to tell you what the news says about Hillary Clinton and the pressure on her with cannabis reform next.
You're getting the full melt.
Get ready, let's go. Hey, na, 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 na. Oh, hey, now, let's go. Yeah, I've got style. I'll make it wild. I'll change it up and switch it up so versatile. I'll be myself and I'm gonna let everybody know.
We have the latest styles to mix it and mash it. So make it your own and bend the trend. JCPenney. When it fits, you feel it. During the JCPenney Back to School Hot Sale, get an extra $10 off when you spend $25 or more with coupon. Nike, Converse, Levi's, and other exclusions apply.
What's up with these things, Victor?
We decided to give ourselves stickers for each feature we release. We read about 10,000 suggestions a week to create features that, as traders, we'd want to use.
10,000 suggestions? Who reads all of those?
He does.
For all the confidence you need, TD Ameritrade, you got this.
Don't miss the first ever cannabis competition this year as the prize contest moves from Amsterdam to Jamaica. That's right, it's all Jamaican fun now with the Big Cup competition in Negril this November. Get your best travel accommodations now at JamaicaPot.com. Pack your beach bong and swimsuit and party down at the warm sandy beaches of Negril, Jamaica for the first ever big cannabis event this year. Do it in style or come have fun on a budget. Best travel prices now at JamaicaPot.com. That's JamaicaPot.com.
If you're like us, your pets aren't just animals. They're members of your family. Pet Pain CBD hemp oil drops are great for aging as well as active dogs and cats. Some people are apprehensive about hemp treatments for pets. They ask us, what are you smoking? Absolutely nothing, and neither will your pet. Like other hemp-based products for humans, the allure is all of the benefits of cannabis without any of the high. The CBD oil has shown to rejuvenate the bones, joints, brain, stomach, eyes, and heart. And the drops contain absolutely no corn, wheat, soy, artificial colors and flavors, or preservatives. Pick some up today. Visit PetPain.com or ask for Pet Pain at your local pet store. PetPain.com. CBD relief for your pet.
We ask people to tell us something that happened in their past and something that might happen in their future. The good things were put on yellow magnets and the bad ones on blue. The results show the past was a pretty even mix of good and bad, yet the future was almost all good things. Now that you've seen the results of this experiment, what does it mean to you?
We all want to think about positive stuff.
Realistically, there will be downtimes.
It's great to think optimistically, but let's plan for whatever the future might bring.
Prudential, bring your challenges.
It's the Full Melt Radio Show.
Hey, congratulations, Brad Smith of Port Huron, for winning the Cadillac bag, and thanks for hanging on during the commercial break so I could write down your information. Brad's getting a Cadillac bag for winning our contest tonight. It's just a phone-in contest, nothing spectacular. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some, register some people to win Cadillac bags and other prizes to play contests on the show. Look for that coming soon. Hey, incidentally, if you're looking to get a copy of the program every day, it's a really simple way to do that. Just subscribe to us on iTunes. Go to thefullmelt.com. Right there at the top of the page, click on the iTunes link and subscribe. That's simple. I got to tell you, there's some breaking news. This just breaking some 4 hours ago as the Detroit City Council has passed rules for marijuana shops. I told you before the break we'd come back and talk about Hillary Clinton. We will do that. Put it on pause for a second. This is breaking. So the City Council in Detroit today approved the first regulations for the city's booming medical marijuana industry. This, according to the Detroit Free Press, and I believe Joe Goulian. Is it Goulian? Is it Goulian? I don't know. It's Guillen. I couldn't even say it. Joe, I apologize. Oops, sorry about that. Joe, I apologize for butchering your name. About 150 medical marijuana shops are operating in Detroit. Until now, city officials had no way to track the shops or control who operated them, stoking concerns among many residents about the potential for violence and other nefarious activity near the shops. Quote, we're dealing with squatting people, buying other drugs, standing on the corner, said Norma Foster, who lives near East 8 Mile Road and Kelly Road. Quote, this medical marijuana is just putting more strain on us, end quote. Under the rules, City Council approved by a vote of 6-1. The shops will have to get a city license or be shut down. So serve this as warning. Right now, you're going to get, if you're an open shop and they know about you in the city of Detroit, within their city borders, you are going to get a cease and desist letter sooner or later, probably sooner than later, from the city. And the cease and desist letter is going to say you must cease operations unless and until you obtain a medical marijuana shop license from the city of Detroit. And this article, I believe, should go on to describe what that process might entail. Under the rules, City Council approved by a vote of 6-1, operators of the shops would be subjected to a police background check, and drive-through service would be prohibited. The ordinance also sets an inspection process and prohibits shops from staying open 24 hours a day. Councilman James Tate said it's the city's responsibility to address residents' concern about the marijuana dispensaries. He said the licensing rules allow people to receive their medicine. And I agree with Mr. Tate. Right now, there's no ordinance to allow for these places to exist. Tate said the compassion is there because it allows these facilities to exist. So what he's basically saying is, look, we are being compassionate. We're going to allow these safe access places, otherwise known as dispensaries, where only carded, licensed Michigan medical marijuana patients could go into a shop and safely purchase their reasonably safe medicine. I see reasonably safe because I don't know if there are any other rules inside of here that talk about testing, etc. I'll get on to the story because I haven't read it yet. This is cold calling for me. The license regulation approved today is one of two pieces of legislation that Tate proposed last month to rein in the medical marijuana shops. The other piece deals with zoning and sets limits on how close the shops can operate near schools, churches, parks, and other dispensaries. I can tell you that in that legislation, because I've read it, in that ordinance legislation, it says that schools, churches, and parks have to have a 1,000-foot distance barrier maintained between shops and said school, church, or park. The 1,000-foot requirement is really a mandate from the federal government in the safe, drug-free school zones. They offer and provide a 1,000-foot barrier of protection to any school or, school grounds where students might be as a barrier between that and any drug activity that might be illicitly occurring on their streets. If you're operating inside that zone, the penalties are much, 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 much stiffer. So there's a tremendous incentive that if you're going to do this kind of stuff, you do it outside of these 1,000-foot school zones. So it makes sense that they're including that federal mandate because this is the kind of thing the federal government looks at when they're deciding whether or not to charge people federally with these kinds of crimes. Dispensaries are easy targets, again, for the feds. So if you're staying within their 1,000-foot barrier, that makes sense, and you should codify that into the city ordinance. Now, with regards to other dispensaries have to be at least 2,000 feet apart, twice the distance. So you cannot have two side-by-side dispensaries competing against each other. If you don't like what's in this one, you're going to have to go at least 2,000 feet up the street to get to the next one. Right now, with 150 shops, there's at least one in every square mile, and with having 150 shops at 139 square miles, you're going to have some, assuming that it's spread out evenly, you have some shops that are going to be 2 or 3 in a square mile. I imagine when you eventually do the math, there's going to be 5 or 6 in a square mile, depending on where you're at. Some and none in a square mile. The City Planning Commission will discuss the zoning proposal at its meeting at 4:45 p.m. on Thursday at the Coleman A. Young Municipal Center. The meeting is open to the public. The ordinance passed today won't take effect until the zoning portion of the marijuana regulation is decided. So it's not in effect, and it's not going to go into effect until they figure out this zoning issue. I assume that it's fast-tracked to be similarly positioned for passage. Jamie Dickens of DMC Strategies, which represents a dispensary with a drive-through called 420 Dank, said the new ordinance doesn't take into consideration the Detroit residents who rely on safe access to medical marijuana to treat their illnesses. By eliminating drive-through windows, you take away a convenience from those who are already dealing with the pain and just shouldn't be forced to get out of their cars if they don't have to, Dickens said. Whether it's online or at the drive-through window, provisioning centers whether it's on site or at the drive-through window, provisioning centers must still abide by the law, and patients must still produce their cards. Councilman George Cushenberry Jr., who cast the lone no vote. Now, George seems to be very liberal on this subject, given my knowledge of Councilman Cushenberry Jr. He said that the council rushed the vote. He says he wanted to submit amendments but didn't have time since Monday's public hearing. Cushenberry repeatedly tried to offer amendments to the ordinance at today's meeting but was ruled out of order. Nobody seems to have any compassion for the people who have received this medicine, who have to receive this medicine, Cushenberry said. What is the rush? Other council members said there has been ample time to draft amendments. We owe it to the citizens of Detroit to answer their concerns. Councilwoman Janie Ayers said this is not something that happened overnight. Council members Barry Sheffield and Scott Benson were absent from the vote. So that's the big news. I don't think it's anything that wasn't anticipated or expected. I don't think that the city council would have even considered this ordinance information if it was going to vote against all measures. It may have considered adopting an ordinance outlawing them, making sure that there was no provision for them, and codified that into city ordinance. They didn't do that. They're making compassionate room for people who rely on this medicine. And let's face it, Detroit is a poor city of about 400,000 people. It's still the biggest city in the state. 400,000 to 700,000 people? I don't know. And I think it was 700,000 last I checked. It seems to have dwindled a little bit more, but it keeps going up and down because they're inviting younger, more suburban, I think, people to the down, and a mixed group. It's not just the black community, which is predominantly what Detroit residents maintain as a population statistic. So now they're attracting, white and Latino and other races into the population mix downtown in Detroit. But predominantly, they're all young, though. These are younger people. They're their tech sector's bringing in. The auto manufacturing companies are bringing in. They got rid of a lot of their old people in the auto die-off of the recession when they were in, some of them in bankruptcy, some of them, having to get federal government loans. Ford's the only one that didn't do that. But, they got rid of their senior staff as top-heavy burden, some of it in GM's bankruptcy. So they got rid of all that top-heavy. I talk about top-heavy. I'm talking about people with pensions, people with, big salaries because they've been around forever, people with a lot of vacation time. That's all cost-heavy to a corporation like General Motors or any auto manufacturer. They got rid of a lot of that and attracted a lot of younger, newer people to the market that weren't hooked up to all this union fare. The old union contracts were much fatter and much sweeter, gave them much more benefits. The newer ones for the younger guys, not so much, but it's still a union job. It's still a good-paying job, and so they're bringing them into downtown Detroit to live because it's a lot easier to not have to migrate, commute around places where, you don't want to talk about the roads of the state of Michigan. God, I'm so Michigan heavy on this. But so I wanted to talk to you about that. Now, how much time do we have left before? Oh, you're going to kill me. It's only a couple of minutes. All right. So let's go on to this business about the big tease over President Clinton. Because, in only about 10 minutes, right as this show's going off, the CNN debate is going on. So let's just see. I'm trying to look at the story now. I'm having a hard time relocating the story. Here we go. This is according to The Hill, U.S. News and World Report. Clinton facing pressure on marijuana reform. This story by Tim Devaney. Democratic presidential frontrunner Hillary Clinton is facing pressure from marijuana advocates ahead of the first debate. As more states legalize medical and recreational marijuana, a number of presidential candidates from both sides of the aisle have called for looser drug policies to varying degrees. Marijuana advocates say it's a positive step for their cause, but they would like Clinton to see stronger comments coming out of her mouth, and some from the other candidates as well. Hillary's probably the worst of the bunch on marijuana reform, and even she has said states should be laboratories of democracy when it comes to legalization. That according to Dan Riffle. We'll get some more details on this story after the break. Stand by.
You're getting the full melt.
Young students are our future. They're eager to learn, eager to succeed, eager to make the world a better place. And they want to make it to school safely. Share the road, take care when passing, and always leave 3 feet between you and people on bikes. Bikes are legal road vehicles. We're all drivers.
Imagine a world where patients can use marijuana like any other medicine. The Marijuana Patients Organization challenges the status quo by helping our neighbors to enjoy a better quality of life. Visit the MPO at marijuanapatients.org and enjoy informative articles, engaging debates, and information about treatments, doctors, and dispensaries in your area. Over 50,000 people have registered at marijuanapatients.org since 2010. Join us at the Marijuana Patients Organization today, marijuanapatients.org.
Hey, it's Steve Green for the Sweet Leaf in Flint, because now getting safe access to medical cannabis patients in Flint, Michigan is never more welcoming. Presenting the Sweet Leaf, a brand new patient experience bringing 12 carefully selected caregivers housed in 9 separate offices to distinctly assist you with their knowledge and reputation for excellent patient care. Classes and training coming soon in the large community room. Check it out in person, 400 South Door Highway, or call 810-259-2571. The Sweet Leaf Center in Flint, 810-259-2571.
If you're like us, your pets aren't just animals. They're members of your family. Pet Pain CBD hemp oil drops are great for aging as well as active dogs and cats. Some people are apprehensive about hemp treatments for pets. They ask us, what are you smoking? Absolutely nothing, and neither will your pet. Like other hemp-based products for humans, the allure is all of the benefits of cannabis without any of the high. The CBD oil has shown to rejuvenate the bones, joints, brain, stomach, eyes, and heart. And the drops contain absolutely no corn, wheat, soy, artificial colors and flavors, or preservatives. Pick some up today. Visit PetPain.com or ask for Pet Pain at your local pet store. PetPain.com. CBD relief for your pets.
Hello, boys and ghouls. Your old friend the Crypt Keeper here with a Pottober News Bulletin. Ghoulies and creepies gather thee round for a map to patience partying down. As the days grow shorter to the end of month 10, it's time to gather, friend among friend. Michigan card holders, admission is free to the X on the map dubbed Hall Deboween. This lure of free fun is perfectly true, and this is the invite. Yes, that means you. The vendors and speakers this day are just ghosts, exchanged for free entry, free food, and a toast. Asunder our differences this Hallows Eve, so we may bring fire to glorious weed. You may light up and your neighbor may match it. The smoke in the air is to bury the hatchet. The contests you enter are all also free. Considerable prizes for the winners there'll be. Canna Meds are welcome. It's alcohol free. The Jam Shack, Mount Morris, from 7 till 3.
Deboween sponsors include Depot Town of Ypsilanti, Sweetly, Flint, Harborside, Ann Arbor, Third Coast, Ypsilanti, Dank Team, Flint, Two Guys in a Grow Shop, Burton, Florida Bob's Place, Puff and Stuff of Lansing, Happy Buddha, Lansing, The Spot, Kalamazoo, Compassion Club US of Grand Rapids, Iron Labs, Walled Lake, Herbal Solutions, Ypsilanti, Clio Cultivation, The Herbal Center of Mount Morris, IDK Farms, Kurtz Leach and Associates of Birmingham, Act Labs, Lansing, Bill Clark Fashion Investments, Burton, Hybrid.Life Magazine, Once Bitten, Twice Baked, Lush Lighting in Niles, Cannabis Council, Detroit, Nichols Law Firm, East Lansing, The Green Rock Cafe, Flint, Urban Garden Supply, Flint, also the Marijuana Ranch, Happy Harvesters, The Full Melt Show, Lindy's Bed, Matty Eddie's, Lex Cocaine, Jaxica Farm, and BDT Hazel Park.
It's the Full Melt Radio Show.
Radio Show.
Hey, don't forget this Friday we're going to do a Butters update. A Butters update from the Saranac, Michigan farm. By the way, it's the Michigan Hemp Company's Advanced Hemp Research Facility that Mr. Joe Brown occupies. We'll do a Butters update on Friday. Marijuana advocates say they've come a long way from previous presidential elections when the candidates would avoid the issue. Dan Riffle from the Marijuana Policy Project admits Clinton is pretty good on the issue, but she's not taken as strong of a stand as some of her other competitors have, he points out. It's just that everyone else has been vocal about the need for reform, while she's only talked about it when asked, Riffle explained. Clinton has been slow to endorse marijuana reform. By contrast, former Rhode Island Governor Lincoln Chafee signed a marijuana decriminalization bill in his state. Former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley endorses rescheduling marijuana so people caught on the drug would face lesser penalties. Oh, if they just took it off the Schedule 1, it would save so much alone. It would take it out of certain realms of people to do like no-knock raids. You can't do no-knock raids on a Schedule 2. It's a lot harder to make that argument. It's a much less dangerous scenario, according to the official scheduling. Senator Bernie Sanders from Vermont has talked about the racial injustices that occur during marijuana arrests. Former Senator Jim Webb from Virginia made drug policy a key issue in his push for criminal justice reform. Marijuana advocates say they would like each of the candidates to clarify their positions during the debate. I am one of them. All of the candidates that will be on the stage tonight have already expressed support for scaling back the federal government's war on marijuana to some extent. And so I'm most interested in hearing more specifics on what they plan to do to better accommodate the growing number of states that are ending prohibition, said Tom Angel, chairman of the Marijuana Majority. What changes will they make to federal laws, Angel asked. Will they move to reschedule marijuana? Will they use their clemency powers to free people who are in federal prison for marijuana offenses? And do they personally think that legalization is a good policy option? I want to know the answer to all of those questions and so many more. Unfortunately, this isn't a presidential debate on marijuana policy. This is a presidential debate on the next candidate for president. And so I think while it's pertinent, while it's important to get every single one of these people's point of view on this subject, and you can bet the moment that I turn this program off tonight, I'm going to CNN to watch that debate because I'm going to tape it, and I'm going to play it back to you and prove to you that what I'm saying, I mean, look, I'm no a fortune teller. I have no extrasensory perception. I've got no ESP powers. I cannot foretell the future. I cannot read tea leaves. Okay, I can read tea leaves, but they don't say anything. What does say something is if you pay close attention to the policy, if you pay close attention to the candidates, you can get the pulse on what's happening. And I'm telling you that pulse right now is telling me, including the news story that I just read to you, cold. I didn't read that news story earlier today. That tonight there will be content about marijuana in this debate. It happened on and you know what really sets the tone for it is the Republican debate. On CNN, I'm sorry. Yeah, am I right? Something seems right. Something doesn't seem quite right here. Yeah, no, they did. It was the CNN debate. It was definitely Jake Tapper. What threw me for a loop is that Fox held the first, Republican debates, and then they held a second set of debates on CNN, and now they're moving along to the Republican debates on CNN, and then I think they're going to go back and do Republican debates again. Democratic debates on CNN. Now they're going to do the Democratic debates after CNN does its second round back on Fox. I think that's how it's going. Don't quote me on that. Nonetheless, looking back at that first and now Fox didn't have the guts to ask him these questions about cannabis. That was the whole thing where, Trump got all up in arms about the Fox, questioner, the panel, what do they call that? The moderator. Talking about how she had blood coming out of places. And, the people were talking about she was referring to her menstrual cycle. Or he was referring to her menstrual cycle. And she's like, and Trump's like, no, I wouldn't even think like that. Oh, you guys are all dirty thinkers. No, that's exactly what you were thinking, Trump. That's exactly what you couched in what you said. You're not stupid. You went to Wharton Business School and you had flying colors for grades. I don't want to hear about how you didn't say that. You clearly did. But that's what that was all about. Now you're moving on. So then we went to the Republican debates on CNN. And that's when you got Jake Tapper to come out and ask these guys, a good majority of them, about this question. They also got around to the autism question, believe it or not, but they did. And you remember that was going on. So now they're going to do the Democratic debates for the Democratic primary and ask those candidates. I don't think you can ask the Republican candidates those questions as a journalist without asking the Democrats. So I'm telling you, it's almost written in stone, based on my knowledge of the news and how this process works, that they're going to ask that question or those questions in some form or another to these candidates. It wouldn't be fair to the Republicans to ask them and not to ask the Dems. I could see the Republicans going, hey, you didn't ask the Dems about the marijuana policy. Why'd you spring that on us? I'm telling you, as a news guy, a guy that's done news and as a news director at places, as a news director, I could not answer that question appropriately if the candidates came back to me and said, look, you never asked the Democratic candidates about the cannabis issue. Why didn't you ask them? You were stacking the decks against us, weren't you? You're slanting the news. You're the liberal media, aren't you? That's what they would have done. And so the answer to that question is to not let them have that opportunity by being forthright and truthful about your questioning and at least provide some version of the same questions to other candidates. So I'm telling you, the writing is on the wall with the initial Republican debate. Chances are very, very good that will follow through with the Democratic debate happening moments from now. In fact, it's kicking off as we speak. So as you're tuning out of this program, I will wrap up by saying this. When presidential candidates come on and talk about policy, it's important that you pay attention, you go vote accordingly. Because if no matter what side of the issue you're on with regards to cannabis, you could be pro or a con. You could be a prohibitionist. You could be a reformer. But the candidate's position on this subject alone will tell you approximately, and I'm just saying approximately, don't quote me on it again, where these candidates might stand on other positions. They're being forthright or not on this issue or trying to cover up stuff when they get asked questions like this will give you an indication as to what they might be hiding behind other policy questions, especially when they pull one of these famous candidate deals and answer a question with a non-answer. Watch the debate, ask the questions, we'll see what they say about marijuana reform, and we'll talk to you tomorrow on this show.
The Full Melt Show is a production of TFM Media.